Hi everyone, Jesse here with etrailer. Today we'll be taking a look at, and I'll show you how to install the Roadmaster custom fit base plate on our 2025 Jeep Gladiator. The base plate is the structural mounting point on your towed vehicle for which all of your other flat tow components attach to. So we'll take this apart and take a closer look at it. We are using a Roadmaster Nighthawk base plate on this, but almost any brand will work on it. You'll just have to look into if you need to add on adapter ends to your tow bar or not. And then the ends on the base plate are removable. It's spring loaded. You'll just pull this pin out and then it'll kind of push itself out. So whenever you're not flat towing, you really have a almost factory look. It's kind of hidden behind the bumper, not really noticeable at all. Then we have a built-in safety cable loop here, which is very easy to access. And also with the base plate is a bracket for your 6-pole wiring, which is going to be required for flat towing. But it's really nice that they thought ahead and added a bracket in, and it goes into some factory bolts here, so you don't have to do any drilling or custom work with it. The 6-pole bracket does come with a hole drilled out, and this is for your air fitting in case you're using an air braking system. For example, Demco's Air Force One. Our neighbor's not using that kit, so we just left that alone. And then as far as your breakaway switch, it didn't come with any kind of mounting bracket, but underneath your bumper here is a series of screws, so really you can just pick any one that you would like and then mount it to that. And also I added a couple washers so that when we're not flat towing, we can just have everything disconnected, take our cable off, and turn that to the side and it hides it. The base plate is just one of many components that you'll need to set up your vehicle to be flat towed. You'll also need safety cables, diode wiring, a braking system, and a tow bar. And then depending on what your setup is, you'll need some other things. For example, our neighbor today opted to add on a charge line to ensure that the battery in their Gladiator is charged at all times. And also they got a Blue Ox Patriot, which is a portable braking system. So in order to power that, I needed to install a 12-volt outlet kit. So it can get to be a lot whenever you're setting up this vehicle for flat towing, and we understand that. If you have any questions or concerns, reach out to us. We do these all the time, almost every day, in fact, and we'd be happy to get you sorted out. Whenever you're flat towing, you want everything to be as level as possible. So that's one thing I always recommend you do before you order all your parts, just to ensure that you have everything that you need right away. So I would measure from the center of the pinhole on the hitch of your motorhome to the ground, get that number, and then with our stock Jeep Gladiator here, from the center of our base plate to the ground was 16.5. So you want those numbers to be as close as possible. We do give kind of a variance of 3 inches, but if your numbers are way off, you'll just have to get a high-low adapter, and we have many different sizes and even adjustable ones here at etrailer. All in all, if you're looking for a base plate for your Gladiator, you really can't go wrong with the Roadmaster option. They've been making base plates for a long time, and they do a great job at it. When it comes to the installation, honestly, the Jeeps are some of the easier base plates to do, but you do have to remove the bumper and then do some drilling through the frame. So I'd understand that if that's not something that you're looking to do yourself, check out our dealer locator. You can find someone local to you that would be happy to get you set up. If you are looking to see how this gets installed, then follow along and I'll walk you through the process. We'll begin our installation by first unplugging our fog light wiring connector here. So there's a yellow locking tab. We'll just pull up on that and then pull out on the gray, and that'll kind of separate it for you. Now underneath the vehicle, we have a series of 7mm screws to remove. Let's go down the line and get all these popped up. Now we have 2 8mm screws a little farther back to remove. Now to get this skid plate all the way off, we have some push pin fasteners to remove. So we'll just work from one side to the other, pop the center piece out, and then you should be able to get that main portion of it popped out. And just work your way down the line, getting all those taken out. Once you get that last one removed, we can set our skid plate aside. Now from the top of our bumper, we have a plastic cover that's holding everything together and kind of just covering things up. This is just held in by some more push pin fasteners. So once again, pop the center out and then you can get the entire thing out. And there's two facing down like that and then a series of them along the side here. So these can be pretty tricky to get to, but most of the time you can rotate them and you'll notice there's a slot. That's going to be the easiest part of it to get your tool up under. Then you can pop them out. We'll get that last one popped off and pull this out and set it aside. Now on the back side of our bumper, it's held in by 4 18mm nuts on both sides. So we'll get those removed. Once we have all of our bumper nuts removed, I just like to loosely thread one back on so our bumper doesn't fall off while we're doing our next step, which is removing these side brackets here. They're going to be held on by a 16mm bolt. So we'll get that bolt removed. And there's going to be one of these brackets on the inside and the outside. Once you have all the side brackets removed, you can remove that one nut that we threaded back on, then pull straight out, and we'll set our bumper aside. Now on both sides of our frame here, we have two holes that we'll need to enlarge. We'll have to get them up to 9/16, so this one up here and this one down here. We also have to do this on both sides, so it needs to go all the way through. And I like to start it with a step bit and then come through with the 9/16 drill bit just to make sure I'm getting the right size, but the step bit seems to cut through this metal a little bit easier. Now you may be having issues getting access to this inside hole here, and we're going to remove this piece off anyways, so I'm just going to go ahead and do that now to make it easier. It's going to be two 16mm bolts. It is held in by some tabs, so we'll just have to kind of lift up on it and pull it out of place. Now we have our driver's side holes drilled out, so we'll get our base plate into place. Just make sure that you have the safety cable loop here on the inside. These are side specific. Then we'll just slide this up from the bottom here. And our factory nut where we took those support brackets off should line up with that second hole. And we'll get our factory hardware threaded into those on the outside and the inside. Now with that metal bracket that we just removed, we will need to cut it up quite a bit. Essentially what we're doing is just retaining the part that bolts onto the vehicle and then the nut tab here for our skid plate. So I have it roughly marked out. We're just going to cut essentially around that. Now we can take those pieces and reinstall them. We're going to use the bolts that came in the kit and not the ones that we took off. So we'll tighten that down with a 17mm socket. Now we'll take our driver side base plate, which they are side specific. You just want to make sure that your safety cable loop is going to be on the inside. And we'll kind of tilt it and slide it up. We'll get the second from the top hole lined up with our factory threaded hole and reinstall that bolt These are the bolts from that support bracket that was on the side that we removed. We'll do the same thing on the inside. Now we can take one of our large or long shoulder bolts with a flat washer. We'll also need to slide a spacer in between our base plate and the frame. Just kind of get that started and push it through. Then we'll also put a spacer on this side, which can get kind of tricky to get everything lined up. All of our hardware that we're installing will get a dab of the red thread locker that comes included. And then for the other hole that we enlarged there, we'll just slide a long bolt with a flat washer through. Get that wiggled and get it pushed all the way through. And on this side, once again, we'll put a flat washer, a split washer, and a nut. Now for our next set of hardware, I did bend this out. We can always bend it back, but it's just going to help us get our wire nut up through the frame there. Try to get that as lined up as possible. Then we'll take a shorter bolt, flat washer, and split washer. Get that pushed through there. It may take some effort to get everything lined up properly, but just get that threaded onto our handle nut. Now we'll get everything tightened down. We'll use a 19mm socket on the handle nut. And then that same 19mm socket for our two long bolts, but we'll also use a wrench on the nut side. And we'll tighten down our factory bolts also with the same 16mm socket that we used to take them off. Now before we tighten all of our hardware down, you'll want to look at these 4 holes here and make sure they're as lined up as possible. What I like to do is take a 3/8 extension and you can kind of move everything around, and then I'll just leave those extensions in there, or at least one, just to hold everything in place. Then for our new bolts, these are going to be 19mm. And of course, you'll need a socket on one side and a wrench for those long ones. Now we'll take our torque wrench and torque all the hardware down to the specifications in the instructions. Now we can take the handle off, and that's just a matter of wiggling it back and forth, and then eventually it'll break off. And then we can bend our bracket back into place. As far as our base plate on the passenger side, it will be slightly different, at least as far as the process goes. So we will enlarge this hole here, but you'll notice that the top hole is not here. What we'll do is drill this hole out, get our bracket up into place, and then we can kind of mark it out, or mock it up and mark it and get that hole drilled. So we'll start by enlarging these ones. The way you drill this hole is really up to you. What I'm going to do is I just have everything lined up, and then I'll drill a pilot hole through here. If you wanted to, you could use a center punch and then take this all back off and drill your holes that way. But I'm just going to drill a pilot hole and get it out to the size we need, and then drill all the way through the frame. That way I know that it's going to be as straight as possible. Other than the little bit of difference drilling out the hole, it's going to be the same process. We'll get everything tightened and torqued down. Now we need to cut out our skid plate, and it really depends on your trim level, which skid plate you have. So in the instructions, you'll have multiple diagrams. Just make sure you match up to the one that matches yours, and then mark it out. And then I'm going to cut ours with a multi-tool. Once you have both of those cut out, I like to just come through with a razor blade or a file and clean up our edges. Now I've reinstalled our bumper and then just bolted down our skid plate. What I'll do next is optional, but the base plate comes included with this 6-pole bracket. And I'm going to use it. So we have a bolt and then a spacer. There's going to be 2 sets of the hardware. Then we can just slip this up through where those push pins were in our skid plate. And then on the top side, which is going to be tough to see, we'll have a flat washer and a nut. Now we can tighten that down with a 14mm socket, and then on the nut, that'll be a 15mm wrench. You want to tighten this down evenly, so just go back and forth. Once you have all of your other flat toe components installed, then that's going to do it for our look at and installation of the Roadmaster custom fit base plate on our 2025 Jeep Gladiator.